And we're also joined from London by i24 news correspondent there, Jonathan Sacerdoti. Good morning, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Before we speak about the revival or quote-unquote revival of the peace talks, I do want to tackle the issue of universal jurisdiction. Of course, this is gaining headlines again because of Livni's visit to London and the temporary immunity that she has been granted. Despite the temporary immunity, protests will be greeting her.
Well, the concept of universal jurisdiction was designed to stop criminals from evading arrest and prosecution by travelling to other countries. And under this doctrine, the UK asserts jurisdiction over those accused of war crimes, torture and hostage-taking, regardless of where the grave crimes were committed. But David Cameron has made it clear, as in fact did the Labour government before his, that they don't approve of ideologically motivated hijacking of this law to try and embarrass visiting Israelis in particular who would be over here for diplomatic missions. And this is not what they feel the law was designed for. And so it's for those reasons that these very small groups that do decide to protest such visits have been stopped by the law, and now by this latest move of the granting of special immunity, they've been stopped from applying for these arrests to be made.
But despite the change in the law, we have seen a decrease of Israeli officials visiting, of course, the United Kingdom because of perhaps the PR that's involved of the war crimes arrest and of course, the diplomatic tensions between the two countries over this law. Is this all a thing of the past because of Cameron's move?
It's a good point. It's not something that's finished. David Cameron's move did make this much harder, and the requirement now for the issuing of an arrest warrant is much higher. The bar's been set higher, and the Director of Public Prosecutions has to authorise the arrest rather than just a magistrate, as happened when Tzipi Livni did have an arrest warrant issued for one of her previous visits here. Of course, that requirement doesn't stop it being possible, and so should the Director of Public Prosecutions feel that there is a substantial body of evidence that could make a trial of such a person worthwhile, then similarly an arrest warrant could be granted. But it's clear that the political bodies here and politicians don't wish for this to be an embarrassment for them when they're inviting these people to the country. For example, Livni is due to meet William Hague and brief him on the stalled peace talks. It's an embarrassment for the nation if those people can't come here for fear of being arrested. But you're quite right that the granting of special immunity in this case just shows that the law hasn't changed enough to make it impossible for such people to be arrested should the Director of Public Prosecutions actually go along with the issuing of the arrest warrant.
And of course, Livni is also in the British capital for the JNF, a Jewish organization inviting her, but she's also there, as you mentioned, to meet with the British Foreign Secretary, William Hague. Has any statement been issued by the Foreign Secretary in terms of the revival of peace talks, or do we not know if that's exactly what will be covered?
Very little's been said about what will be covered. Of course, Tzipi Livni isn't the foreign minister, so her meeting William Hague is notable in that regard, but it's most likely that there'll be some level of briefing. It's also worth noting that Mahmoud Abbas was in London meeting with John Kerry, and this visit coincides with that. So one can never really know the true purpose of the visit, but the JNF's bringing of Tzipi Livni over here has been in the diary for some time, since I believe before the stalling of the peace negotiations. And so that's the primary reason for her being brought over here. And then the meeting with William Hague was presumably lined up as she's going to be here. Whether or not it's simply a briefing on the situation or something beyond that, we just can't know at this stage.
Okay, Jonathan Sacerdoti, our i24 news correspondent in London, thank you for joining us this